Well, good morning. My name is Rocky Moretti. Moretti is spelled M-O-R-E-T-T-I, and I'm the Director of Policy and Research with TRIP. TRIP is a national nonprofit transportation research organization based in Washington, D.C. TRIP is supported by a coalition of transportation organizations in the manufacturing, insurance, construction, and labor and engineering areas. Our new report, well, first let me talk about the format briefly. I'm going to go ahead and give my initial comments on the report itself. And then we will hear after that from Mark Doerr. Mark is the president of the New York State Hospitality and Tourism Association. We've asked him on because the quality of the transportation system is absolutely vital to the state's hospitality and tourism industries, one of the largest employers and one of the most significant draws to visitors coming into the state. And he's going to talk about the impact of the transportation system on the health of the tourism and hospitality industry in the state. I'll go ahead and give my remarks. We'll then hear from Mark. Once he's spoken, we'll open it up for questions, and either through the chat function, you can go ahead and indicate that you have a question, and then Carolyn Kelly of the TRIP staff, who's also on the call, at that point would elevate you to the panel so that you can interact with us and ask questions or any follow-up questions. The report we're releasing today, New York Transportation by the Numbers, is based on an analysis of data that we've obtained from the Federal Highway Administration that has been provided by the New York Transportation Department and a variety of other national organizations who provide the latest data on transportation. The findings of the report, the most significant report, is that TRIP estimates that the cost to New York motorists of rough roads, of traffic congestion, and of traffic crashes in which the lack of adequate roadway safety features were a contributing factor is $36.7 billion annually. The TRIP report also has breakdowns for the state's largest urban areas, including the Capital District, the Buffalo area, the New York metro area, Poughkeepsie, Rochester, Syracuse, and the Utica urban areas. In my initial comments, I'll provide data for the state's largest urban area, the New York metro area, and also the Capital region. We have also on our website provided video quality comments for each of the 8 urban areas, but again, also feel free if you want to have those additional numbers provided in the question and answer period, we'll be happy to. TRIP estimates that the average cost of motors in the New York metro area of roads that are deteriorated, congestion, and lacking some desirable safety features is $3,697 annually. The TRIP report estimates that the average cost of motors in the Capital District area of roads that are deteriorated, congested, and also lacking some desirable safety features is $1,894 annually. The report also took a look at the condition of the system and finds that statewide, that 25% of locally and state-maintained major roads in New York are in poor condition, and 18% are in mediocre condition. The TRIP report finds that in the New York metro area, 44% of major locally and state-maintained roads are in poor condition, and another 24% are in mediocre condition. The TRIP report finds that in the Capital District, that 15% of major locally and state-maintained roads are in poor condition, and another 21% are in mediocre condition. The TRIP report found that 9% of New York bridges are rated in poor condition and in need of immediate repair, and 55% are rated in fair condition. In the New York metro area, the TRIP report found that 6% of bridges are rated in poor condition and in need of immediate repair, and 68% are rated in fair condition. In the Capital District area, the TRIP report found that 8% of the region's bridges are rated in poor condition and in need of immediate repair, and 58% are rated in fair condition. We've been watching across the country and certainly in New York State, vehicle travel trends, which had generally been growing prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. What we saw during the initial parts of the pandemic, that in New York, that overall travel dropped by 45%, but by 2022, vehicle travel in New York had increased to a point where it was 9% below the level of 2019. In 2023, vehicle travel in New York has increased by 4%, the third highest rate across the country. So vehicle travel in the state is now 5% below what it was pre-COVID, as the state slowly returns in terms of travel and economic growth as it recovers from the COVID-19 pandemic. That also means we're seeing increased, as travel returns, we're also seeing a return of traffic congestion. The TRIP report notes that in the New York metro area that the average motorist is spending an additional 91 hours annually stuck in traffic and wasting 37 gallons of fuel due to traffic congestion. The TRIP report finds that in the Capital District area, the average motorist is spending an additional 46 hours annually stuck in traffic and wasting 21 gallons of fuel annually due to traffic congestion. The report also looked at traffic fatalities. Unfortunately, what we've seen across the country is increase of traffic fatalities, particularly since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the New York metro area, from 2018 to 2022, there have been 5,207 fatalities a year, an average of 1,041 traffic fatalities annually in New York. Approximately 30% of those traffic fatalities are of either pedestrians or bicyclists. It's estimated that in about a third of traffic fatalities that the lack of adequate roadway safety features have been a contributing factor. In fact, in 2022, the U.S. Department of Transportation adopted a comprehensive safe system approach to reducing the tremendous number of traffic fatalities across the country that really combines a holistic strategy that includes safer drivers traveling at safer speeds, safer vehicles, and very critically, an improvement in roadway safety features and improved post-care crash. We see across the country that when cost-effective roadway safety features are implemented, from adding paved shoulders to adding rumble strips, to improving lighting, to improving intersections, to building appropriate or providing appropriate pedestrian and bicycle facilities, that we see a significant improvement in traffic safety. But again, that requires having additional funds in place to make those improvements. The report points out how critical the transportation system in New York is to the state's economy, carrying $1.3 trillion worth of goods annually. And the latest estimates are that freight travel, the value of freight being moved to and from sites in New York, based on also adjusting for inflation, is going to increase by 99% by 2050 and by weight by 61% by 2050. We also took a look at funding and noted that in 2021, the approval of the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act has been a critical benefit to New York. It has increased federal funding for roads and bridges in the state by 50%. Unfortunately, during the same period, from the beginning of 2022, we've seen a 36% increase in highway construction cost inflation. Unfortunately, that has dampened to some extent the benefits of this significant boost in federal funding. So let me conclude by pointing out the critical importance that New York modernizes transportation system, including improving the reliability and safety of the system, but also providing a well-maintained system of roads, highways, and bridges. I'm going to turn it over to Mark to talk a little bit about the importance of the quality of the state's transportation system to its tourism and hospitality industry. Mark?
Sure, thanks, Rocky. Again, my name is Mark Dorr, president with the New York State Hospitality and Tourism Association. We're based here in Albany, New York. We represent over 1,000 members throughout the state. Primarily, we're in the business of representing hotels and amusement parks. And as a reporter, as a journalist, I spent the first 10 years of my career doing that. So I appreciate you all being on here, but I know the first question you're probably thinking is, we're talking about construction, we're talking about infrastructure. Why is there a tourism guy on the call? But the reason is it has become vitally important to our tourism industry that the roads and the infrastructure within the state is working properly. Where this all began was a few years ago. I was at the Capitol in Albany. We were working on our tourism issues and funding and short-term rentals. And I bumped into the highway folks and the construction folks. And I said, well, what issues are you working on? They said, well, we're really here to try to make sure that the state is properly funding work and construction on bridges and roads and highways. And I said, wait a minute. That's what it's important to us too. And our members and their members started to talk and said, you know what, we want to get behind the movement in New York State to make sure the infrastructure is the best that it can be. And the reason why is because tourism that we represent is the third largest industry in the state with an economic impact of $120 billion. And really what Rocky touched on is one of the crux of our support is that when our folks are coming into the state, if they're from out of state to go to a resort or an amusement park or stay a week in a hotel and have a great time, they often get stuck in traffic. And Rocky had great information on the amount of time they're stuck in traffic. So what that does is everybody's looking forward to getting to vacation and then they're stuck in, 2 hours of backup. Well, they're already coming in thinking they're gonna have a great time. They're like, oh, the first impression is, okay, I can't get to my destination when I want to. And also, lanes are shut down and different things. So the first impression for our tourism folks is of utmost importance. And they put a lot of money and time and effort into making sure when you get to their front door, their parking lot, everything's great. They make the curb appeal at first impression. And oftentimes getting there leaves people with a bad first impression. So if the state can kind of better fund and get everything looking better, more seamlessly being able to travel, that's what we're really in support of. And I did want to share one story of how important it is to our industry. We represent hotels. I also mentioned we represent amusement parks. And last week I was in the middle part of the state and there was an amusement park there that had spent millions and millions of dollars on new rides, a new parking lot, everything to make sure the guest has the best experience when they can get there. And the thing that he said to me was, he goes, Mark, I wish we could do something about the roads and the bridges leading into our property. He goes, I want the people to have a bumpy ride on my roller coaster. I want them to get turned upside down on the rides, have a great time. I don't want them to have that experience getting to my amusement park. And as he said, that's becoming more and more prevalent on, things that their guests are saying is, it was great when I got here, but getting here was a bit of a hassle. And if you've ever traveled into New York State to go to a destination or you live here, you often see, a line of traffic that's backed up for hours and hours. And with what Rocky was talking about and some of the things the state can do, that would alleviate a lot of that with the better funding in order to upgrade the infrastructure that we have. So that's why it's important to us. First impressions are the hallmark of the tourism industry. And we want their first impression to be from the time they get in the car to their home to the time they get to the front door of the amusement park or the property. And with what Rocky was talking about, there's a lot of work to be done, as you can see from the data. And we're just hoping to support the work that would help then in a year or two to make that data a little bit better, where people can travel within the state a little bit better, and making sure that getting to the destination is as enjoyable as being at the destination. And that's why we so fully support the work that is being done by Rocky and his group to highlight what our state needs to do.
Well, thank you, Mark. We're now going to open it up for questions. And Carolyn, why don't you sort of explain how that works?
Sure. Thanks, Rocky. And thanks, Mark. I'm Carolyn Kelly. I'm the Director of Communication for TRIP. As Rocky mentioned earlier, we'll be able to do a brief Q&A with Rocky and with Mark. So if you have any questions about the findings of the report, you can use either the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen, or you can submit it as a chat. And I'll be able to then promote you to a panelist. So we'll be able to see and hear you, and you can ask your questions live, just as you would if we were all in person. So while we wait for some questions to come in, I'll just let everybody know that we will have the recording of this news conference available on our website which is tripnet, tripnet.org, probably in the next half hour or so. And the full trip report is up there now, as well as news releases that are customized for each of the 8 urban areas for which we've got data in the report. I don't see any questions that have come in quite yet. So Rocky, if there's anything you'd like to add, or Mark?
Mark, I'm just sort of curious how the industry, the tourism and hospitality, coming out of COVID, if you feel it's recovered, if it's come back different, if it's become more reliant on the transportation system. I'm just curious how that has worked again coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah, good question, Rocky. It's come out well as far as the leisure traveler, but we're talking about New York State highways and bridges. What I can tell you is the data coming out of COVID is very specific on this. The good thing, if anything, that came out of COVID is, as we remember, people within New York State during that time had to travel within New York State. So they found places to stay here that they never knew. You know, everybody wanted to go to South Carolina, and you're always looking to go outside of the state you live in. Well, they found places within New York State they didn't know were there. The great thing is they've been returning to those places. So to your point from earlier, there's probably more leisure travel traffic in the summertime in New York State than ever before, because people have started, when you look at the staycations they did during COVID, they're still doing those and said, hey, I don't have to spend an extra $3,000 to fly to South Carolina. I can do something similar here in New York State and drive to it in 3 to 4 hours or 2 to 3 hours. So with your study too, you're looking at the summer, the peak travel season. It's ahead of pre-pandemic levels. So to your point, you have more people traveling during the summertime within New York State than ever before. So if there's ever a need to upgrade how they're traveling, it's now more than ever.
Interesting. Thank you. Carolyn, are there any questions?
Nope, I don't see any questions coming in quite yet. And I'll let everybody know that, as I said, the report's on our website now. Once you've had a chance to digest that, if you have any questions as a follow-up, you can always get in touch with Rocky or myself, and we can put you in touch with Mark as well. And we're happy to set up any individual interviews or even Zoom interviews as well.
Thank you, Carolyn. Mark, thanks for taking some time to provide some comments. And thanks everyone in attendance. And as Carolyn says, we're certainly available throughout the day for any follow-up interviews. Thank you again, and everyone have a great day.
You.